Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to start tonight just by doing a little housekeeping. This year we have went to final forms. At the beginning of the year, you probably noticed you didn't get the stack of forms that you had to fill out about your son and daughter's health history, emergency contacts, all of those items. Instead, we went to an online process called Final Forms. And like all new programs, we had a couple bumps in the road. So I think we have those ironed out. So some of you I know in here have went on and have put your kid in and put up information in. I need you to go back in, and there's a couple forms that were missing the first time, like the Tylenol permission form and a field trip form. Verify those, and then you should be good to go. If you have not done it yet and you're not for sure what I'm talking about, grab one of these sheets before you leave. It shows you how to put your kid in, and then once they're in, you can add all their information. Tomorrow we'll be pushing an email to all of the students because our filter was blocking an email from the outside. So the kids have to verify some things, but they weren't getting the email that Final Form said they were, just because of our filter. So if you would do that, that would be great. Next I'm going to turn it over to Coach Allgood. He's going to talk a little bit about our drug testing.
Thanks. Sorry I'm overdressed. We have softball out here tonight, so it's a little warm out there. Thanks for laughing, Karen. I needed some of that. Just wanted to talk to you a little bit about our drug and alcohol testing program. And initially, why did we do this? Mrs. Peterson had been to a conference and saw a presentation by Safe Sport, who is conducting this for us. And so it's done outside of our school system by people who have no affiliation with our community. And she brought it back, and Dr. Endorf and myself and Mrs. Peterson discussed it. We took a week and said, let's think about this. Is this something that's good for us? And then we'll get back together and talk about that. And so when we got to get back together and discussed it, the thing that we felt is, okay, so why would we do this? And it's not because we're looking to say gotcha. What we're looking at is that our kids, with the things that they're faced with today, that this gives them an out. This gives them, I'm not doing that, our school test for this. It's a good deterrent to stay away from those kind of things. And really what our goal is to lead our kids in the right direction. And so when you say, okay, who does this affect? Well, it's 6 through 12 if they are involved in activities outside the normal school day. So if a kid's in school, we cannot test kids that are here from 8 to normal school hours, 8:10 to 3:45, because by law, every kid is entitled to an education. And so we cannot test kids that do that. But kids are involved in extracurricular activities, can be tested because that is a privilege. And these are rules that we've always had, that you can't partake in those things. Now we're just testing for it. If somebody would, so let me go back a second. I was going to jump ahead of myself. This is going to be we'll have approximately every other week, twice a month. And it will be 12 high school students, 4 middle school students. And if a kid would come in and say, Mr. Allgood, I'm not going to pass this test, that would be considered self-reporting. And so if our kids self-report, our consequences are, for the first time, and I want to tell you about the education a little bit, because the consequences, because people say, I don't think that's harsh enough. Well, if our kids come to us and say, I'm not going to test positive, the first time, we're not going to take them to the town square and hang them. What we're here to do is help them, and so we're going to educate them. They have to go to counseling at the parents' expense. They have to complete a counseling course, and they have to have that back on file with the school before they're eligible. The other thing that they have to do is test each time after that. They have to test at the parents' expense. So we have our normal amount of kids that would test, plus these kids, or kid that test positive would have to do that. And then after that, like I said, the first time we want to help you. We want to guide you back to the right path. And then if it would happen again, then the punishment gets a lot more severe. But ultimately our goal is to help them, and so we don't want to bury them the first time. It will be starting soon. That's coming up. I can't tell you when that date would be, because that's something that's kept confidential, so that nobody knows this is the day it's going to happen, but it will be starting soon. It's coming real soon. So one thing I would encourage you to do, one of the questions that we've gotten is, why not nicotine? Why not juuling? And I would tell you this, there's only one school in Nebraska that's doing that. That's Fairbury High School. They just started that. And I think it would be for us to not see and wait and see how that goes and what kind of legal ramifications may come from that. We'd be jumping in really not knowing what we're jumping into. And so we thought it would be best to wait on something like that and see how that goes for Fairbury and be smart about how we do things. So, if you do have questions, feel free to call myself or Mrs. Peterson at the school. We put a lot of time into this. Our goal is to build success with our kids. And to do that, we think this is a good thing for them. So, feel free to call if you have questions.
Can I ask one just really quick?
Yes.
Does this include the walking parks and rec?
No.
Okay.
No, that's outside the school. Yep, that's an office.
And the testing at practice or?
No, the testing, so when we submit, I have a list of all our kids that are in extracurricular activities. And so we submit that list to Sports Safe. And so it goes through a randomizer. And so with a randomizer, we'll spit 12 names out, 12 high school names, 4 middle school. And then the day of, we get that list, we go down and we get them out of class. I'll go down and get them. They come down, they would wait in line, the nurse takes them in, and the nurse sends it in. But this will be a nurse from outside our school system. It will not be our school nurse. So we don't, I mean, there may be a kid, when we visited one of the schools, one of the things they told us is we had a kid whose name got drawn 4 times in a row. And a kid came to us and said, "Do you think I have a problem?" And they said, "No, it's a randomizer, so that could happen." They said that's a rare thing, but potentially could happen. And you cannot pick who gets tested. And so when you get the list of kids, you'll have alternates on. So if a kid is not in school that day, then you go and you get the alternate. That's why you don't want to say this is the day we're testing, because somebody may stay home just to avoid that. But if we get that list, then we go to our first alternate. And if that kid's not here, we go to the next alternate. We can't even go down to our alternates and just pick a kid. We have to go in a row. And so that way the fairness of we're not picking somebody out.
Are the parents informed? Either way.
After, if they would test positive, the lab will call the parents and then they will call us.
So what about me? Just to know that it happened?
Yeah, I don't think with the negative.
Yeah, they would have to happen.
If it's only given extracurricular,
Curricular, yeah.
don't you think it might possibly see maybe a child quitting anything extra because they don't want to get caught?
And one of the schools that we visited, we talked about that. That was the question we asked, and they said, we didn't really have that. And so I can tell you, I do the eligibility lists that go to the NSAA every year. And I can tell you by the lists we have, we didn't really have any of that. And our kids have known since last early spring that this was coming. And so we really didn't have any of that. And I understand that question. It was one we asked ourselves. So. Okay, well, thank you.
All right, thank you, Coach Allgood. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask Coach Allgood, or I'll be around after also. Next, we're going to go into internet safety and digital citizenship. As you know, all your students have either MacBooks or Chromebooks, and so we think it's important to provide them with this information to keep them safe. This year was the first year we had Karen Hazy out, and she actually did 2 presentations today. 6th, 8th were together, and then 9th through 12th. And now we're going to have our parent portion. So Karen is a lawyer from KSB Law and has a great presentation for you. Again, ask questions throughout, and she'll be around at the end. So for Karen Hazy.
Hey, before we talk internet safety, let me just tell you real quickly, our law firm represents, there's 244 school districts in the state. We represent 190 of them. So I've done these drug test questions and answers, and we help write policies and such. And I will tell you that I had real mixed emotions when schools started doing this, but we have not had any negative reports. I mean, it's all been positive when schools have implemented it, for what that's worth. I took a look at the map of all the school districts, and I think all of your neighbors except one are either considering or have already implemented drug testing, because we live in 2019. So if you've got questions about the legality and like, why don't we test everybody? It's the kids that aren't involved that are probably using. I think that's true. The United States Supreme Court has told schools they can only test kids in extracurriculars. So that's why North Penn Central's doing it that way. So I just think that's interesting, and I'm happy to answer that question. All right, on to this. I love your kids. Had a fantastic time with 6th through 12th graders. Your students, I was telling Dr. Endorf that I can really tell that you guys have an awesome school community because how open your kids are. And so your kids heard a version of this presentation that I'm going to share with you this afternoon. And my goal is that parents can be able to have the vocabulary and the opportunity to have conversations with their kids that kind of match up with what they learned this afternoon. If you are my age or better, so some of you are children, like too young to know this, but if you grew up when I did, when we wanted to get away from our parents and hang out with our friends, what did we do? Got in the car. I grew up in Crete. We drove down Main Street of Crete, turned around in the Pomona parking lot, drove down Main Street, turned around at Sculla's OK Tire, right? And this article from the Atlantic magazine talks about how youth behavior has changed in the 10 years since the smartphone was released. Instead of getting in cars to get away from their parents, to go hang out with their friends, what do your kids do now? They're on the phone, right? Or playing Fortnite or Minecraft or whatever, right? That doesn't mean that they aren't hanging out with friends, they're just doing it in a different way. And for all the complaints that we have about kids being on their phones all the time, in the 10 years since the iPhone was released, teen pregnancy is at an all-time low. Because kids are having less sex. Sending pictures, you know? I mean, that's not a good thing, but you take the bitter with the sweet, right? Student traffic deaths are at like a 30-year low. Because kids aren't in a hurry to drive. Because they don't have to get away from their parents, they don't have to get in their car, right? Student citations for possession of alcohol are also declining because kids aren't drinking, they're not away from their parents drinking, they're away from their parents like playing video games. So I just want to point out that it's not like I'm here to tell you how terrible technology is. And I think schools like North Bend Central that are one-to-one and giving kids laptops and implementing that technology in school are really the wave of the future. It's just that every good thing comes with some bad. You know, it's kind of take the bitter with the sweet. So just like I talked with you guys about last year, I want to talk about the 3 main areas of problems that we see. The laws in Nebraska have been significantly updated, and starting September 1st, the sexting and some of the child abuse statutes are going to be completely revamped, so that's a great opportunity for me to share that with you. So I want to talk about cyberbullying, I want to talk about sexting, I want to talk about internet safety. Having a smaller group than we had last year, I think makes hopefully you guys more brave. I'd much rather answer questions than just march through slides, you know, so put up your hand and let's have a conversation. I told your kiddos, middle school, I spent a lot of time talking about this new definition of bullying. The Centers for Disease Control have this new definition of bullying, and it's really kind of changed how we deal with these issues on a school basis. The first thing is that they say bullying has to be unwanted behavior. Before this definition was rolled out in 2015, we spent a lot of time with school administrators trying to figure out if something that a kid said was actually hurtful, actually unkind. We still talk about, you know, be kind and all that, but we were really trying to figure out as a school person how a kid felt. Now they have put right into the definition that it has to be unwanted. Here's why this matters so much for parents. Moms, love you, but moms get hurt feelings way faster than kids, right? And so the things that someone is saying about your kid or with your kid online, if it offends you, we certainly want to work with you on that, but it's not legally bullying until it offends your kid. Which means that the very same comment could be perfectly fine in one context and hurt another kid's feelings. I think that makes a lot of sense because I can now tell your middle schoolers, if you don't want to get in trouble, before you post something, show the person that you're talking about and see if it hurts their feelings. That's an executable direction for kids. But it's very frustrating for parents who have a different standard than their kids do. And so I just want to share with you that now we as school lawyers and school administrators, we look at it from the kid's perspective. We ask the kid, did this upset you personally? Because that's the standard. Other thing that's really weird about bullying and the technology thing, like if your kid's best friend tests positive for pot at this first round of drug tests, your kid's not going to get in trouble. Because your kid didn't test positive for pot, right? And just because their friends are doing it doesn't mean they are. In a bullying and cyberbullying context, we can also punish the entire group. So if there's a group of kids that are exchanging, like in a Snapchat group or a group text, and only one of them is doing offensive things, if the other kids don't report or do something to tell the group that that's not okay, we punish the entire group. And the reason for that is right in the CDC definition, that it's another youth or group of youths. Last thing, and when we were in school, it was always the bullying was the popular girl against the unpopular girl, the jock against the dork, you know what I mean? We had that kind of up-down power balance. Then for years, the first 15, 20 years I was representing schools, we didn't really ask questions about who was up and who was down. If it was mean, it was bullying. They've put that up-down power relationship back into the definition now with an observed or perceived power imbalance. And so the idea is back that bullying has to be somebody with power in a less powerful position. And again, I don't know that that's going to be problematic at North Bend Central, but it is a big change in how we're dealing with these issues legally. These statistics don't seem to be changing. Sometimes I have kids say, we talk about this all the time, Karen, why are we still talking about bullying? We all know. Well, the reason we're talking about it is the numbers are startlingly high. 73% of students report that they have personally experienced bullying at some point in their school career. That's true even in supportive environments like North Bend Central. 44% they have experienced it within the last 30 days. Here's why I don't necessarily share these statistics with kids. Here's why I think it's useful to share them with parents. If, God forbid, your kid is going through something, I don't want you to think that this means your kid is, not that the suffering is not important, but they're not uniquely suffering. This is something that all of our kids are struggling with, and we need to be having, it's not a one and done conversation where I come in and talk to kids and the problem solved. This has to be an ongoing, all the time set of conversations that you have and that the school has and that kids have. Last thing, every school is required to have an anti-bullying policy. This is the statute that says every school has to have it. It allows us to punish kids if they've engaged in physical, verbal, or electronic abuse. So that includes Snapchat and Instagram and all that stuff. It also allows schools to punish kids for violating any portion of the Nebraska Criminal Code. And if they use their MacBook or Chromebook, depending on how old your kiddo is, to do something inappropriate, it's just like they did it here at school. We consider that school computer to be school property. Quick footnote. We had something last year where there was a whole bunch of inappropriate content on a kid's computer, a lot of inappropriate images. And the kid was adamant that he had not downloaded them himself. And the principal's like, Karen, I can't say for sure, but Dad looked awfully, Dad was kind of like shuffling his feet while we were, interrogating the kid. And the principal's like, I don't want to ask Dad, but, what should we do if we think, that it wasn't necessarily the kid that had put these inappropriate images on the computer? And our approach and what we're required to do by the Nebraska Department of Education is to hold the kid accountable for the content of his device. And so you should reinforce with your students, they should not be sharing passwords with you any more than they're sharing passwords with friends, because the school security protocols is for them, for the school to have the administrative privileges and only the school. And we don't want unfortunate situations where kids are getting punished for stuff that they didn't do other than the fact that it was on their computer. Easy consequences to take away technology. I teased the high school kids. I said, if you get in trouble tomorrow, would you rather miss school or miss the game against Johnson County Central? Guess how many of them picked miss the football game? Kids really value extracurriculars. That's why I love the drug testing protocol, because I think it keeps kids on the straight and narrow. It's also our go-to consequence for bullying and cyberbullying. We can suspend short-term suspensions for up to 5 days. Long-term suspension is up to 19 days. Back when we were in school, expulsion meant the kid disappeared and never came back, right? Sometimes I have parents very frustrated who say, my kid is getting picked on, my kid is getting targeted, and the school just slapped the bully on the wrist and let him come back to school the next semester. Just so you know, the maximum consequence we can do for expulsion now is 1 semester. That's just the heaviest we could go. Last consequence I don't have on the list, but we're actually using it quite a bit in digital misconduct cases, is an alternative school assignment, where we tell kids, I'm sorry, if you cannot get along with the kids at North Bend Central, you can't come to school here, and then we send them to, someplace really bad, like Howells Dodge, Scribner Schneider, you know. I told the kids Logan View today and they were like, oh. I talked to your high school students about this case, so it's kind of fun to do the same case with you guys. This is a mom who has spent her own hard-earned money, sends the kid to a recording studio to make a rap video. This is some highlights of the lyrics the kid has in his video. You better watch your back. I'm gonna serve this N-word like I serve the junkies with some crack. Don't you think mom is proud? T. Bizzle is the track coach. Everybody would know he's talking about, the track coach. Run up on T. Bizzle, I'm gonna hit you with my Ruger. Yes, I know he misspelled Ruger. You effing with the wrong one, gonna put a pistol down your mouth. Middle fingers up if you wanna cap that N-word. Kid posts this video to Facebook and YouTube, has 2,000 hits before the school finds out about it. Following week, a kid plays this for the principal on his phone, which just makes me laugh so much. The kid who made the recording gets a 7-day suspension, sent to the alternative school, no school activities, which includes no participation in commencement. If you are the mom of a senior and you've already started thinking about, you know, cleaning your carpets and repainting your living room or whatever, mom gets all fired up because she wants her kid to commence. She hires the ACLU or contacts the ACLU, and they sue. And the family says, look, it's true, the coach is a jerk. Does that argument win? No. Lyrics, everybody agreed that this kid was not actually a threat. Nobody thought this kid was actually going to get a gun and shoot the track coach. Their best argument was First Amendment protection, arguing that the kid had a right to free expression. Now, if you are the parent of a teenager, in your home, your child has no rights, and that's a good thing, yes? My kids do not have free expression rights in my home. Shut up, go to your room. In a high school context, students do have First Amendment free expression rights as long as what they're saying does not create a material and substantial disruption at school. So the fight in this case is whether or not recording a rap song about the track coach created a material and substantial disruption. And the family said, look, there's nothing, the kid was compliant in school, he followed all the rules. It wasn't like he was rapping down the hallway, you know, while the coach was walking around. And so the family argued that the school could not punish him under the First Amendment. The court here said, since social media can now be accessed on cell phones all over, no matter where you are, anything that you talk about school, even if you're off campus, has the potential to affect school. And they said that you can't threaten teachers. That's basically the sum of this case. There's a paramount need for school officials to be able to react quickly and efficiently to protect students and faculty from threats, intimidation, and harassment if it's intentionally directed and disrupts the school community. So that's the standard we have for even off-campus speech. If what a kid says off-campus creates a material and substantial disruption on campus, we can punish it. And remember, if they use their Chromebook or their MacBook to say it, then it's like they just said it right here in the middle of the gym floor. Real quick, a lot of kids now have 2 Instagram accounts. I was going to ask your kids, Mrs. Peterson, do you know, do they call it a Sinsta or a Finsta? Here, Sinsta. So sometimes they call it Finsta, a fake Instagram. Sometimes it's a Sinsta because it's where you show your sins. If you are an involved parent and you follow your kid on Instagram and you're thinking to yourself, this is lovely, she never does anything wrong, do be aware. A lot of middle school and high school kids have 2 Instagram accounts. One, so that mom stays off your back, right? And then one where you do all the bullying and post pictures of yourself being inappropriate, whatever. And so it's just something for you to be aware of because it's just so prevalent. Here's how you find out if your kid has 2 Instagram accounts. One, you could ask them. I'm a big fan of doing that while you're in the car, preferably at speed, right, so that they can't get away from you and leap out. You can take their phone, and I always took the position, my kids are 19 and 23, but if I'm paying the cell phone bill, man, I can look at that phone even now, right? So look at their phone. The way I found out that my oldest child had 2 Instagram accounts is, you know how Instagram suggests your friends? So it suggested me to, and I'm like, that looks like Anna's picture. And sure enough, she had 2 accounts. So then we had to have a whole conversation about if that was okay. You can also take your do a Google image search of your kids if you want to. But knowing that a lot of kids, and especially up in this part of the state, up in northeast Nebraska here, we've had a lot of issues with kids looking perfectly fine on one account and then using that second account to really kind of get after their peers. So I wanted you to be aware of that. Have you had issues with that already? Yeah. Okay, so that's all school-based consequences. That's my bread and butter. And I will tell you, I think I told you this last year. I don't 100% remember. I don't know if did I tell you I had not slept in like 36 hours when I was here last year? Because I just flown back from Alaska. Oh, I did? Okay, so I remember this. I remember talking to you guys vividly, but I don't necessarily remember all the details. Anyway, what was my point? Oh, I am one of the most aggressive attorneys in the state in terms of punishing kids at school for digital misconduct, and I want you to know why. It's not because I hate your kid. It's because I would much rather have your child face a 3 days in school suspension or a couple days of detention than to have some of these other consequences. And where we see families really get involved in civil litigation or press criminal charges is when they feel like the school has not done enough. So I'm a big fan of imposing consequences at school because I think that's best for everyone involved, whether you're the victim or the aggressor or something that's, something in between. But this civil lawsuits I talked to you about this last year, the law has changed. Nebraska has completely revamped their civil litigation statute. These are all money cases. These are cases where your homeowner's insurance would theoretically pay. Let me show you this case from Texas to show you how this works in real life. This is a high school in Texas, and on Instagram they have what they call we have little people here so you can read what's on the screen, right? And what this is it's posting pictures of girls and casting aspersions on their character. 4 different students had administrative privileges to post things to this account. Their biggest mistake was including pictures of the daughter of an attorney. He subpoenas Instagram, gets the usernames of all the people that have administrative privileges, sues these families in civil court, and the parents filed a motion to dismiss saying, basically, this is not defamatory because everything they said about all the aspersions they cast on her character were 100% true. And the judge is like, we are not going to talk about the personal life of a teenage girl like this in my courtroom. No, thank you. In the end, they settled for $15,000 each, and Dad made the girls who posted the stuff publish a letter of apology in the newspaper. Why am I telling you about this case? Because in Nebraska, starting September 1st, they have a brand new law on the books that imposes civil liability for anyone that shares intimate images of anyone else without their consent. It allows for actual damages, so if your kid is emotionally distressed, if she has to see a counselor, if he misses school, you can recover damages for that. But look at the third bullet point. The assumption is if you don't have actual damages, you are entitled to $10,000 per incident per defendant. And you don't have to prove that you went to a counselor, that you had any other emotional distress. This case is a fun case because Dad's a lawyer, and that's why Dad, that's how the girl gets to court. Looky here. This law is going to allow for the winning party to recover attorney's fees. So it's not a matter of going and finding an attorney and getting money out of your account to pay a retainer. Attorneys are going to take these things on contingency because they know if they win, they'll be able to recover their fees from the losing party. When I say that I want to impose more consequences at school, do you see why ticked off Dad feeling better about somebody getting suspended or expelled? That's better for you than getting sued under this new law. Right? And I think this is going to be a game changer because the cases that law enforcement is kind of schizophrenic about whether they prosecute these things or not, but this is going to put the power back into the hands of parents about whether they want to file a civil lawsuit or not. If my kid's 18, if I had a kid in high school, I would be checking with my homeowner's insurance to make sure I had coverage. That's how concerned I am about this. So that's civil liability, and I do think that's going to really change the environment in Nebraska. Third thing we're seeing kids face is a ton of terroristic threats charges. You commit a terroristic threat when you threaten to hurt someone, intending to cause terror, or this is where we get high school kids. acting in reckless disregard of causing such terror, right? Mom, you know it's not, we talked about bullying, how it has to be unwanted, that's subjective to the kid. Terroristic threats, even if the kid isn't scared, if you're scared, that is acting in reckless disregard and could be a terroristic threat. It's a class 4 felony. We're just keeping screenshots in our office of news coverage of terroristic threats cases as we're involved in them. I think we have like 6 of these that we could like flash up here. So many kids getting criminally prosecuted right now. Which story should I tell you about? Let's talk about Neely Oakdale. This is what I talk to your middle schoolers about. Kid puts on Snapchat that he's going to make Columbine look like a joke. Superintendent calls our office and says, what do you think I should do about this? And what is every school attorney with their salt going to say? Call cops, right? I'm not coming to check, to see if it's true. So they call the cops. Antelope County Sheriff has just gotten a grant to purchase excess military equipment. So their SWAT team is itching to try out this new stuff, right? They show up and Neely Oakdale, it's a very similar size school to North Bend Central. The cops show up in 3 large SUVs, pull up in front of the school. They pile out of those SUVs. They're all wearing their black riot gear. They got riot helmets on with the face shields down, right? They go busting in, think of them coming down your hallways, busting into the school with their weapons drawn. Find this 8th grader that's made this threat, drag him out of the classroom, and take him and assign him for making terroristic threats, and house him in the Antelope County Jail until the parents can post bail. Problem is, there is no judge in Neely that day because the judge is a circuit rider, right? So she's in, I don't know where she's in, Plainview that day. And so 9 times out of 10, when a juvenile is arrested, they release the kid to the parents' custody, and that's that, right? Antelope County Sheriff is so fired up, he will not release the child. Kid spends the night in the Antelope County Jail. Now, the next morning, Judge Moss, and I tried cases against Donna Moss. She is not a warm and cuddly person, right? So the family's there, like, with their bail application, and they want to get their kid home, and she says to the family, hold on a second. She wheels on the sheriff, and she's like, are you telling me, am I informed correctly that you took armed officers into a school with weapons drawn, and then you took this child away from his schooling, and you lodged him overnight in the jail? And I can just hear Donna Moss saying that. And the sheriff said, here's the entire point, and this is exactly what I told your middle schoolers. The sheriff said, Your Honor, a 12-year-old knows right from wrong. And I think we forget, right? We forget that when they're children, they can't remember to bring their football jerseys to school, right? But they are moral agents. And I cannot tell you any of the cases I've worked on where they've made a terroristic threat, where the kid didn't know really deep down that it was wrong. They just thought that they wouldn't get in that much trouble, right? And so I'm begging you. It's the best analogy I have is like joking about having a bomb when you're going through TSA. That's not funny. Those guys don't take that as a joke. And law enforcement, there is huge pressure from the Attorney General's office on law enforcement to take school threats more seriously. The training is all assume the worst, always drill to the worst possible scenario. We should be just overwhelmingly telling kids, do not joke about this stuff. This is not funny. Anyway. Okay, that brings me to sexting. This is my favorite thing that I showed the high school kids this slide. This is Marcus. He texts Denise and says, send me pics of you in bra. And Denise says, okay. And here's what she says. See, it's her in her bra. Number one way kids are using, technology kids are using to exchange nudes is Snapchat. Kids have this false perception that because Snapchat pictures disappear, it's the safe way to exchange nudes. Please do everything you can to push back on that. Kids screenshot, they record them. Also, forensic experts can get the snaps back even if they've been deleted. But here's the other reason I'm so glad to have a chance to talk to you guys, because again, starting September 1st, they have revamped the sexting laws and how they apply in Nebraska. When I was here last year, I told you that anyone that takes, any minor that takes a picture of him or herself has committed a class 4 felony and is able to be registered as a sex offender if they're convicted, right? Now, they are saying it is unlawful for any person to knowingly make, publish, blah, 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 sexually explicit conduct of a child other than the defendant. So starting September 1st, if a child takes a picture of him or herself, doesn't distribute it, doesn't do anything else with it, but takes a picture with of themselves, they now have the chance, if they delete that, they have not committed a felony crime, any crime at all. Okay, so and I think that's fair. I think that's just for I've always thought it was weird that a kid could look at him or herself in the mirror and not be charged, but take that very same picture, very same image with a phone, and now you possess child pornography. So they changed it to say if it's a picture of the defendant alone, that is not a crime. Now I will tell you, I did not make a huge emphasis of that with your kids, because I don't want them to be thinking, oh, here are ways for us to test boundaries, right? I did tell them it is still unlawful to deliver, distribute, display, advertise, trade, or provide any person any visual depiction of sexually explicit conduct which has a child, again, other than the defendant as one of its participants. So sharing images is still unlawful, but not of the defendant, him or herself. Does that make sense? So that's, again, I think that's fair. I'm going to skip this because I want to get back to this. It's still illegal for anyone to possess an image. So let's say that your kid is dating a girl. She takes pictures of herself, sends them to him, and he has them on his phone. If that happens today, your son is in the active commission of a class 4 felony. Starting September 1st, if that happens, it's still not awesome, but as long as he hasn't shared the picture, it's a class 1 misdemeanor starting September 1st. Second offense is still a class 4 felony, but so a first offense is going to be popped down to a misdemeanor. Again, I think of that as the boyfriend rule, and I think that's fair. If your kid is charged, there are some affirmative defenses that they've added into the law now. 100% it's going to be worth your time and effort to hire a criminal defense attorney, because I think it will be easier to get some of these charges dismissed than it was a year ago. Well, than it is right now. This is a brand new law. It is now going to be unlawful in Nebraska to share intimate images of anyone, no matter how old he or she is, without their consent. What we've had is a lot of situations involving young adults, college kids, and recent college graduates that have bad breakups, and the ex-boyfriend or girlfriend shares those images out as a form of revenge porn. Now it is going to be class 1 misdemeanor for the first offense, class 4 felony for subsequent offenses for anyone that shares any images without the other person's consent. Now, can a minor consent to these images being distributed? No, minors can't consent. So if it's distribution of a minor's images, those can be charged no matter what. But if it's an adult and the adult hasn't consented, that's what this one is about. Are you guys familiar with the story of Reed Adler? Reed is a high school student. His dad is an educator, and so mom and dad now travel and talk to high school students. Girl had an inappropriate picture of Reed and used that picture to basically force Reed to be her boyfriend. And Reed felt so overwhelmed and trapped by this that ultimately Reed took his own life. In part because of the threatening things that the girl said, the Adlers asked the prosecutor if they would file charges against the girl, and we discovered that it was not until September 1st against the law to threaten to disclose information, an intimate image of someone if you didn't actually disclose it. Like the threat itself was not unlawful. So they have added this to the Nebraska statutes. It is now unlawful to threaten to disclose an intimate image, even if you don't actually have that picture. So that's what a lot of predators are doing, like telling someone, I'm going to share this picture if you don't share another one, and they don't have the picture to begin with, right? So it's illegal even if you don't have the picture, even if you don't actually share it. Just threatening to disclose an intimate image is now its own standalone crime. Again, class 1 misdemeanor the first time. This one is going to be a game changer. It is illegal for anyone to ask a minor now to share a nude of him or herself. Here's what how they get there. A person commits child abuse if he or she knowingly, intentionally, or negligently cause or permits a minor child to be placed in a situation to be sexually exploited by encouraging the child to engage in pornographic photography. That means that little Marcus, when he sends Denise that text that says, "Send me a pic of you in bra," he has now attempted to commit child abuse. And he can be prosecuted. I don't think he will be. The real game changer is this last bullet point. This now means that when school officials find out that a boy or a girl is asking for images, not that the images have actually been exchanged, that's always been child abuse. Now, if the school finds out that the kid is asking for images, that is attempted child abuse, that is a mandatory report by school officials. Now, parents sometimes get real fired up, like, this is kids being kids, why do you have to blow this out of proportion, why do you have to call the cops? Just so you know, I have defended a bunch of these cases where teachers either are criminally charged for failure to report, or more frequently, what happens is the Commissioner of Education takes action against their teaching certificate. So this is a huge deal for educators. We have to report, even if we don't think that your kid is, a predator. We just don't have a choice. And now asking for images is attempted child abuse, even if the girl does not, or the boy does not comply. Does that make sense? See why I'm glad you're here? Like, these are big changes to the law. Now, with the high school kids, I did an extended discussion about one particular kid who had sent a picture of himself, and there was a search warrant filed for the police to establish that the picture really was of him. Yep. And then there was a second search warrant filed that required this kid to take certain medications to make sure everything was in the same condition in the two pictures. Right? So so I could see some of the high school teachers were like, wow, Karen, we're kind of like, that's a lot to talk to high school kids about. Here's why I did that, and here's why I want you to know about the criminal law. In the studies that they've done about how we can discourage kids from engaging in sexting, the only thing that seems to be effective is talking about the nitty-gritty of what criminal prosecution is actually like. Because they don't think about what it's like to have that picture marked as an exhibit in a criminal trial. This Northwestern study said 59% of the kids that were engaging in sexting behavior said that if they really understood what the criminal prosecution was going to look like, they would not have done it. So that's why I spend all the time talking to your kids about it. That's why I think it's worth your while to go back and reinforce with your kids what the criminal consequences are, because it seems to be the only thing that actually changes kids' behavior. So I did not share this with your kids. Sometimes I do, but I had such a good time with your kids. I was kind of moving along to make sure I met my time obligations. But I thought I would share with you some of the mugshots of kids, teenagers, that have been convicted of sexting in Nebraska just this summer. This person said she was a 13-year-old girl. This person said she was a 13-year-old girl. I believe this was a 14-year-old boy. This person held herself out to be a 17-year-old girl, 16-year-old boy. Your kids all think they're way too smart to get tricked by this, right? Especially your high schoolers. But we get reports all the time of people in Nebraska targeting high school age kids, and high school boys seem to be a particular target. But this guy was targeting a particular student, and I first became aware of this because I got a call from a school district that said, we have someone who wants us to release information about whether or not a student is enrolled in our high school. And I'm like, well, enrollment data is directory information, you can disclose it. And the bookkeeper who called me is like, well, yeah, but this person isn't enrolled, I've never heard of this person. I'm like, well, 100% you can say that's not a high school student. So then I get a call from the neighboring district, a little bit to the north, who says, we have a dad on the phone and he's real adamant that we release enrollment information about this kid, but he's not enrolled in our school, so I don't know what to do. And then finally, I get a call from a third school who says, we have a dad who says his daughter is being targeted by an Aurora high school student, but he can't find evidence of where the kid's enrolled in high school. Can you help us sort this out? Come to find out, this is like a 36-year-old man who has told this girl that he's an Aurora high school student, and he's taken screenshots of like school activities, you know, in the school's Facebook page, and claiming that that's him, you know, at this game, and this and that and the other thing. And the girl had been somewhat careful to like go back and double check, who did Aurora play last week? Yeah, sure enough, it was this, you know what I mean? She thought she was being super canny, but all he had done is use the school's social media to pass himself off as a high school kid. Now, I'm not saying that means the school should not be on social media platforms. What I'm saying is your kids think they're super duper sleuths, you know, that you can never fool them. And we get this, you know, all the time. It just takes somebody willing to take screenshots. This is a guy from Fairbury. Oh, quick footnote. We also represent Fairbury, so I will let you know how the nicotine testing goes. It's already kind of caused a kerfuffle in their community, so we'll see. This guy lived like just a few blocks from Fairbury Elementary School. He was involved in a multi-state scheme to reach out and convince kids to interact with them, and ultimately their goal was to get the kids to do things on videotape. And then they were selling those videos for $50 a download internationally. This guy was charged, I believe in Illinois, and they never bothered to tell Fairbury that he lived like 3 blocks from elementary school. So these are the things that we see just constantly. It used to be, your kids think they're super smart, because it used to be like Kik, Omegle, kind of these weird off-brand social media platforms where a lot of predators were hanging out. Number one platform that predators are using to target kids now is Instagram. Instagram is still one of the most popular platforms that kids use. If you think that because your kid has a private Instagram account, they're safe from being interacted with by predators, that is just not true. Let me show you how it works. Let's say that your kid has a private account. Settings are set so that strangers can't interact with them. But this kid, you know, the neighbor kid, the jerk kid from the parents that don't pay attention like you, this kid has a completely open account, right? Your kid who has a closed account pushes the like button on Instagram, which is that's just good manners, right? They all like each other's pictures. When you push the like button, I can then pull up a list of everyone who has liked this picture. And you can see everyone who has liked this picture, even if their account settings are private. So this person's account settings are private, just like mom told her, right? But now, if I have this person's username, I click on these 3 little buttons, and it lets me send a message to them directly, even though they have a closed account. And then what the kids say is, oh, don't worry, before I get the message, I have to say accept or not accept. So when this person sends a message, there should be another screen where the message says, you know, whatever, and then there's down here another little box that says accept or decline. But what the predator does is he's sending pictures you don't want your kids to see. You know what I'm saying? And they see all of that in the preview pane before they accept or decline the message. The point of it is this: you need to talk to your kids about not interacting with strangers on Instagram, even if they have a private account. Because having a private account is absolutely no protection against someone getting their username through likes or other interactions. And what we see predators doing is targeting clusters of kids so that they use the same friend group over and over again. Does that make sense? In case I haven't weirded you out enough, your middle schoolers love TikTok. That was clear today. TikTok, if you don't know what it is, it's like 15-second little videos. It's a lot of kids dancing and lip syncing, and it's fine. I can watch hours of dog video, not hours, minutes of dog videos. Like I'll lose an hour watching. Anyway, here's the point. TikTok's algorithm is such that if you have a really cool video, TikTok pushes it out to all of its users, even if you have a private account. And so everybody wants to be, they call it TikTok famous, because if your video gets picked by TikTok to be pushed out there, then like hundreds of thousands of people might see it. So a Lincoln girl this summer made a video that got put into TikTok stream, so she's TikTok famous. Woo! And so she gets a message from TikTok that says, Because your video is so popular, we would like to embed advertising in your video, and all we need from you is your bank account information, and we'll be able to deposit the money for the ads right into your account. Well, she doesn't have an account. She's, a middle school girl, but she has mom and dad's account because that's how she pays for her Minecraft or some online video game. So she gives them mom and dad's account information. Mom and dad know nothing about this until they go to withdraw money from the checking account and they're $4,000 light, right? And what had happened is someone who had seen that TikTok famous video posing as TikTok had reached out to this girl and told her that they were going to give her money. And the last I heard, the family hadn't been able to recover these funds because, these people are in New Zealand or someplace. So do reinforce, most of the online gaming your kids are doing is subscription-based, so there's some credit card or debit card associated with that account. So your kids have your bank account number, or theirs, right? Do talk to your kiddos about this. This kind of thing is one of the reasons that my kid is not permitted to have my account number. Like, when he was in high school or middle school, I was like, you know what, buddy, if they get your detasseling money, that sucks, but better you than me, right? Better you lose, $1,000 than someone gets in and gets my house payment. But you need to be aware that this is targeted, and TikTok in particular is middle schoolers, so it's a little bit more of a naive group, and so it's a particular target. Okay. Last thing, you now are thinking that you're going to go home and tell your kid to get off the gosh darn phone, right? Delete the TikTok account, let's call it good. Here's the thing, I don't think as parents that is necessarily the best way to go. When my oldest was applying to colleges, she was applying for a real competitive scholarship at Texas Christian University, and as part of her scholarship application, she had to give them all of her social media accounts. And if they were private, she had to friend them. They required her to let them see what she had posted. And so I found this really interesting because of what I do, and I said to the admissions counselor, I'm like, so what happens if a kid doesn't have any social media? And she says, oh, we would assume the worst. We just don't, if they say they don't have social media, we know that that's not true, and so we just assume that they have stuff they don't want to show us. And do you remember the first time you went to buy a house, and you had to have somebody co-sign with you because you didn't have any credit, and the reason you didn't have any credit is because you hadn't bought a house yet, and you hadn't bought a house yet because you didn't have any credit, and it's like that crazy hamster wheel of establishing a credit history? I think social media has become like credit. Look at this. 47% of employers already say that they go online to look for candidates, and if they can't find any social media history, they are less likely to call that person for an interview. And that's today. When our kids are looking for jobs, that's going to be even more prevalent. So I do not think the solution is to tell your kids that they can't interact with people online. I think the solution is for us to model appropriate behavior and for us to be online with them rather than just nagging at them about what they're doing when we don't really understand it. So, if you would like some additional resources, Safe Smart Social is a great website. If you're like, what is this TikTok of which you speak? They have like 2-minute videos that they show all the different apps. He shows some of the good, bad, and the ugly. Common Sense Media has great resources for parents as well as for schools. The government actually, the cyberbullying.org is a great source of information from a research-based perspective. I'm a big fan of not letting kids charge their phones in their bedrooms because of what I see that they do overnight on their phones. Big fan of having them charge downstairs or wherever. And I just think we need to be real clear with our kids about what the consequences are for breaking rules. Just like the drug testing, first offense is small and second offense is bigger. I think setting up something like that makes a lot of sense. Okay, I'm here. I'm being paid to be here. Thank you, board. But I think part of that is being a resource. So that's why I give families my contact information. I cannot represent you. I'm not your lawyer. But if your kid is struggling, I'm committed to finding you resources to help you if you need it. So call me. There's no additional charge for that because I kind of feel like that's sort of my obligation from having been here and gone through all this with you. Having said that, questions? Gotta go home and make sure that math is done. Awesome.
answer questions if you have any. If not, have a good evening. Thank you.